Three North Carolina congressmen were part of that group, and one of them joining us in studio tonight, Congressman David Rouzer, a Republican in the 7th District. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you.
Quiet times in Washington, right?
Yeah, very historic.
Just tell me, from a first-person standpoint, what was this like yesterday? How did it all sort of unveil from your perspective?
Well, frustrations have been building for some time, and to put this in perspective, I think it's important to understand that the previous two impeachment inquiries for Nixon and Bill Clinton, you had a vote on the House floor that actually authorized an impeachment inquiry. And as part of that, what you establish are the rules of the game, so to speak, and the rights of the minority party. That is customary, that is precedent. And that is why, because the Democrats and Speaker Pelosi and Adam Schiff have abandoned precedents here, that is why many Republicans, myself included, have grown more and more frustrated with this process. Now, keep in mind, too, that for 2 years, two plus years, all the accusations that have been hurled at President Trump, none of them have proved to be true. In fact, every one that they bring up, it's dismissed later and they come up with another one. And we are really, really tired of this kangaroo court, what we call it, because that's really what it is, where they're behind closed doors and they just leak information that they think will be damaging to the president without providing the whole transcript. And here's the other thing. There's not one thing that's taken place in there, according to those members on the Intelligence Committee and the Oversight Committee and a couple other committees that are allowed to be there. There's not one piece of evidence that's brought forward, if you even want to call it evidence, not one piece of information brought forth that is classified. And so we've hit a point where we're just sick and tired of it. And they're going to continue to have these closed-door meetings, and they're going to selectively leak information that they believe will be politically damaging to the president. It's a complete, total violation of due process. It really smacks of total, complete partisanship and unfairness. And if there's one thing I think that the American people instinctively understand, is they understand the process of being fair. They understand that it's very important that the president or anybody that has charges pinned against them, that they have the opportunity to refute those, to look at their witness, to counter any arguments that are thrown against them. With that, this president has no rights whatsoever under this process. And the minority party, by the way, all of us as Republicans that represent 800,000 to 1 million people each, we can't do a very good job of representing our constituency and sharing information with our constituency when we're not allowed into the room. When we're not given any information whatsoever, and all we know is what we read in the paper, which we find out from our colleagues who are in the room, is very, very biased and very selective.
What was the point of yesterday, though? Because, and we'll get into some of the other points, because I think Jim Jordan's been in some of these committee meetings as well. So
yes,
was this sort of I mean, some are calling it a political stunt, but was it a political move to sort of make a point about the process? Is that what that was about yesterday?
Well, we wanted to highlight for the American people that we, as representatives of our respective districts, the 800 to 1 million people that we each represent, it's hard to be a representative when you don't have access to the information. You know, my constituents back home, they expect that I'm going to have access to this information that's being provided. I don't have access to it. As a member of Congress, we should have access to it. And if they want to set up a procedure where they go through this grand jury style, we'll go and set up a select committee that's specifically focused on that, where you set up rules of engagement, rules of the road, where the minority has certain rights. That is not what they have done. They just basically have made this a committee of one, basically. Speaker Pelosi at the head, and she's tapped Adam Schiff to lead it. And and what's really egregious is in these sessions that are supposed to be private, and they say it's like a grand jury. Well, a grand jury, you don't have leaks. Adam Schiff is leaking selective information that he thinks personally will be damaging to the political prospects of President Trump, and that is fundamentally unfair. So that's why we did what we did yesterday.
So critics are arguing that Republicans are now fighting about the process because you're not arguing against what some believe the facts are. So Related to the transcript that we've seen, what we heard from Bill Taylor, who's the top diplomat to Ukraine, and some of the other reports that have come out, you don't believe there's any cause of concern to at least investigate this?
Well, we are upset about the process because there aren't rules of engagement, there aren't rules of the road. This is a kangaroo court, and quite honestly, we have not seen anything that has come out that is stuck. And all these allegations that they throw at the president, every time they get debunked, and then they come up with another one. And let me tell you what I experienced and what I overheard in the room when I was there yesterday when we got in. The Democrats sitting around the table, and a lot of us know these Democrats. And many of them are very rational people most of the time. But when it comes to Donald Trump, they hate him so much. They believe that he is crooked to the core. They believe that all it is a matter of time before they find something that will get him. Well, that's not how our process works. You know, you're innocent until proven guilty. Their mindset with Donald Trump is there's absolutely no way he's not guilty, and therefore we're going to keep turning the pages until we find something, and then we'll bring it out to the public and let everybody see it, and we're going to say, aha, you're guilty. Well, that's not how this process is supposed to work.
But aren't you think we're jumping to whether he's guilty or not, and whether or not things that Bill Taylor, I mean, do you think Bill Taylor is not telling the truth then about what he says occurred regarding that phone call and the aid?
Everything that I have read, in the press, every bit of information that I had picked up from my colleagues like John Ratcliffe and Jim Jordan and others, there's a very, very different story. In fact, Ratcliffe basically the other day, he destroyed a particular witness and their testimony. And this particular one that you're referencing. And so there's a very different story if you look at the transcript as a whole based on the way it's been described to me. But instead, you have these very selective leaks that paint a picture that really is not true.
But the transcript's not a leak, and you think so? You just think we're getting a portion of Bill Taylor's testimony? I'm using him as one example. You think we're just getting a portion, and that's not representative of what the whole? You haven't seen enough, I guess.
That's exactly right. And here's the thing. And I think this has been said by some of my colleagues before. If this is so damning, if this is so horrible, then release it to the American public and let us all read the transcript.
Although Schiff has said that they will do that, and they will do public hearings. You don't trust him, I think.
No, not at all. I mean, what have they done that suggests that we can trust them? Not anything. All this started a couple years ago with this whole Russia hoax. Well, that's been debunked. None of that proved to be true. I read the transcript between the president and the president of Ukraine. There was no quid pro quo in there. I read the whole thing. In fact, if I was President Trump and had been through everything that he's been through, and knowing that the whole Russia hoax and all started basically in Ukraine, I'd be wanting to know what's going on over there too. So I did not see anything in that transcript, and of course it's available for everybody to read, that was problematic whatsoever. And here's another very important point. As an American taxpayer, taxpayers want to know that before money is going to go to a foreign entity or any foreign country, that there's no corruption. In fact, it's in our statute, it's in our laws, that you cannot have corruption and receive American aid. Well, it's perfectly appropriate for the president to say, hey, what's going on with the corruption over there? We need to clean this up. And once this is cleaned up, then you get your aid. That's perfectly appropriate. There's nothing sinister about that whatsoever. In fact, as an American taxpayer, I want a United States president to say, hey, before we send you any money, we want to make sure that you cleaned up all the corruption over there.
Except for that, in that he asked for a favor and he asked him to investigate a political rival.
No. The favor was at the beginning. He said, hey, all this junk that started up, take a look at it. We know that the prosecutor was dismissed. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
Well, one thing we do know, this will be going on for some time. We
it will
appreciate
be.
you coming in. I know it's been really busy. Good to see you, Congressman. Thank you
for
coming on. Appreciate it.